Somewhere in America, there's a town where your cell phone is against the law. While the rest of America was busy changing, these towns simply decided not to. Over 3,000 U.S. towns have lost population every decade since 1950. More than 500 American communities have no reliable internet access to this day. We're counting down 10 of them, from forgotten prairie outposts with only 3 residents to storm-lashed islands where supplies arrive once a month. These aren't ghost towns. People actually choose to live here. The question is why? Our countdown begins on the Nebraska plains, where one railroad's departure froze an entire town in time. In 10th place, Gross, Nebraska, sits quietly on the high plains, a living snapshot of the 1880s, caught in the long shadow of a vanished railroad. Founded in the days when cattle cars and grain wagons filled its streets, Gross once counted nearly 600 residents. But when the Fremont Elkhorn rail spur shut down in 1935, time seemed to pause. Most families packed up and left their homes behind. Today, only 3 people remain, tending to original houses that still line the dirt roads. Ask Tom Miller, the last permanent resident, and he will tell you. Some places do not disappear. They simply wait. In Gross, the past lingers, stubborn and serene, as if the next train might still come rolling over the horizon. Number 9, Shelter Cove, clings to the edge of California's lost coast, where the Pacific pounds against cliffs and the forest presses right up to the back door. Platted in 1910, this hamlet was meant to be a timber port, but the surrounding wilderness had other plans. Roads arrive here only by stubborn curves, and in winter, sometimes not at all. Officially, about 468 people call it home year-round, though the number swells to 2,000 when summer brings in the curious and the sun chasers. Most of the coastline remains undeveloped, held in trust by conservation laws that keep sprawl at bay. The Resort Improvement District keeps the lights on and the water running, but there is no strip mall, no fast food, no rush. Instead, the hum of the ocean and the wind through cypress trees set the pace. In Shelter Cove, isolation isn't a burden. It is a promise, kept for more than a century. Eureka, Nevada, keeps a velvet curtain drawn between its past and the present. 77 miles from the next town, Eureka feels more like a stage set than a stop on the map. The streets are quiet, but at the center stands the Opera House from the 1880s, an ornate relic from the days when silver and lead made this place a boomtown. With just 266 residents left, the Opera House still hosts performances, its red velvet seats outnumbering the audience most nights. Here, the ghosts of miners and socialites linger in the gilded boxes, and the applause echoes longer than the rush ever did. In Eureka, the show goes on, even if the audience is mostly memory. Number 7, Jordan, Montana, keeps its boots planted in a world that rarely changes. Founded in 1896, this cattle town sits alone on the prairie, buffered on all sides by the Charles M. Russell Wildlife Refuge, a federal boundary that acts like a time capsule. 52 miles separate Jordan from the next incorporated place, a distance measured more in hours than in minutes. The population holds steady at around 50, give or take a ranch hand or two, most of them working land that has been in the same families for generations. Here, federal land is not just a neighbor, it is a wall that blocks highways, subdivisions, and the quick march of progress. The main street still looks much as it did a century ago, with weathered storefronts and the slow rhythm of ranch life. In Jordan, the outside world is always just beyond the horizon, and that is exactly how folks seem to like it. Number 6, Angle Inlet, Minnesota, is the only town in the lower 48 states where a trip to the grocery store means packing your passport. Platted in 1903 at the tip of Lake of the Woods, this sliver of land is the northernmost point in the contiguous United States, and the only way in by road is to cross into Canada and then back again. For about 65 year-round residents, border crossings are part of daily life. Mail, fuel, even a carton of milk all require running the international gauntlet. Customs stations and tribal offices handle the paperwork, but the real border is the long stretch of wilderness that keeps the outside world at bay. In summer, the population swells to 400 as anglers and artists arrive, drawn by the promise of a place where maps twist, routines bend, and the rest of America feels impossibly far away. Number 5. Marfa, Texas, turns remoteness into a statement. Here, the desert stretches for nearly 500 miles to the west, broken only by a town that's equal parts ranch and gallery. Marfa first appeared on railroad maps in the 1880s, then swelled with soldiers during World War II. But the real twist arrived in 2005, when a permanent Prada storefront, stocked but never open, appeared on the empty highway, courtesy of artists Elm Green and Dragset. Today, more than 50,000 visitors a year come to puzzle over this high-fashion mirage, wandering from minimalist installations to weathered feed stores. For Marfa's 1,800 residents, the art crowd is just another chapter. Outsiders drawn by the same wide sky that kept the world at bay for generations. In Marfa, isolation is not a problem to solve, it is the main attraction. Number 4, Oahe, Nevada, stands as a living archive on the high desert, where the main street is lined with buildings first raised in 1877, and those structures are still used for daily life, not just for show. With a population of about 68, Oahe sits nearly 72 miles from the next outpost, a journey that turns every trip for supplies into a minor expedition. Here, time is measured by the creak of original floorboards and the patina of tin ceilings, not by the sweep of digital clocks. Property rolls and the historic registry confirm an unusually high ratio of untouched buildings. Each one is a chapter in a story that never quite finished. Residents walk the same wooden sidewalks their great-grandparents did, opening doors that have weathered more than a century of wind. In Oahe, the past isn't a destination. It is the backdrop to every ordinary day, and stepping outside can feel like crossing into another century. Coming to the top 3, Glasgow, Montana stretches across the northern plains as the most isolated service hub in the lower 48. Founded in the 1880s as a rail stop for wheat and cattle, Glasgow once thrived on the pulse of the Great Northern Line. Today, about 3,300 people call it home. But the real number that defines Glasgow is 4.5 hours to the nearest major city. The town serves as the lifeline for a region larger than some states, covering nearly 14,000 square miles of farmland and prairie. Out here, a supply run is not a quick errand. It is a day-long commitment, carefully planned and never rushed. The local Chamber of Commerce puts it plainly, "We are not at the end of the world, but you can see it from here." In Glasgow, self-reliance is not just a virtue, it is a necessity, woven into every grain elevator and every handshake. For those who stay, the distance is more than a number. It is a badge of honor and a quiet promise that the outside world will always feel just a little bit far away. Number 2. Adak, Alaska sits at the far western edge of America, so far out that the next landfall is Russia. Once a bustling naval base, Adak was built for war and then left to weather peace alone. When the Department of Defense pulled out in 2010, the population collapsed, from thousands to barely 200. Rows of empty barracks and family homes still stand, battered by salt winds and rain that never seems to let up. There is no hospital here, just a clinic. If you need more than a bandage, a medevac flight is your only hope. Fresh produce arrives on a barge, maybe once a month if the Bering Sea allows. Most days, the shelves in the lone grocery store hold canned beans and powdered milk, reminders that supply lines are as fragile as the weather. For those who stay, life means making do with what is at hand, swapping stories in the old base rec hall and watching storms roll in from the Pacific. In a duck, the world feels both impossibly distant and uncomfortably close, a place where the past echoes in every empty hallway, and survival is a quiet act of defiance. And finally, in first place, Green Bank, West Virginia, exists in a silence shaped by law, not by chance. Here, in the heart of Appalachia, the 13,000 square mile National Radio Quiet Zone stretches across valleys and hills, forbidding most wireless signals by federal decree. Cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, even ordinary radio transmitters are out of bounds, their presence a violation of FCC regulations first imposed in 1958. At the center stands the Green Bank Observatory, where astronomers hunt for whispers from the universe, and the faintest static could ruin a night's work. Around 2,400 people live in this hush, adapting routines most Americans would find unthinkable. No texting from the porch, no scrolling in bed, no GPS to guide the way home. Law enforcement patrols for rogue signals, and the local cafe posts a handwritten warning that says no cell phones, please. For some, the silence is a hardship. For others, it is a sanctuary. In Green Bank, the future is always just out of reach, and daily life unfolds at the quietest edge of the modern world, a place where connection means something entirely different. Across all 10 towns, one pattern stands out. Modernity isn't destiny, it's a choice. Here, history lingers not by accident, but by will. These places remind us that in a world obsessed with speed, holding on to the slow lane can be its own kind of adventure. Where would you stop?